Your blood runs orange and blue. This is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
Here we go again. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast. And no, when I say here we go again, I'm not talking about the retirement of Tom Brady. I'm talking about another Knicks bungle at the end of a close game. Again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods. I'm EJ Stewart, joined by Tommy Beer. Tommy, kind of speechless, kind of how that game ended last night between the Knicks and the Lakers. We'll get into that. We'll talk about this Heat matchup coming up on Thursday, along with some other news and notes. But man, really rough loss for the Knicks at home against the Lakers.
A tough loss. That one hurt. If you're a Knicks fan, that was a winnable game against the team that's, yes, they have LeBron, yes, they have AD, but their depth is a major issue. A team that came into the contest 5-6 games below 500. When you look ahead at the Knicks schedule, 12 of the next 14 games are against teams with winning records. A lot of good teams, a lot of cream of the crop in the East in there. This was a game you really wanted to get, and you had an opportunity to get with 4.5 seconds left, an opportunity to win it. And the play they drew up, if you want to call it a play, was not successful. And that was probably what we should lead the show with, EJ. What do you think?
Yeah, let's get right to it. So again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, New York Knicks podcast, now on YouTube and anywhere you can get your podcast, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature and subscribe to the channel so you can get these episodes whenever we drop. We drop 3 times a week. This is episode 2 of this week. And let's get to this Knicks L. So Knicks fails to execute in crunch time, leads to another crushing loss at home. The Lakers were able to outlast the Knicks 129-123, winning the game in overtime. The Lakers got out to a 6-point lead late in the fourth quarter, but the Knicks stormed back to tie the game and had the ball with 4 seconds left and a chance to win at the end of regulation. But the team failed to get a shot off on a Julius Randle isolation against Anthony Davis as time expired. New York scored just 1 field goal in the first 4 minutes of overtime, leading to the tough loss. LeBron James, 28 points, 11 assists, 10 rebounds, another triple-double for the King. He also passed Mark Jackson and Steve Nash for 4th on the NBA's all-time assist list. Anthony Davis added 27 in the Lakers win. For the Knicks, you had Jalen Brunson, who had another stellar game, 37 points, but was not given the ball at the end of the game in that final possession. So we'll certainly talk about that. Julius Randle, who did get the ball in that possession, had 23, but struggled offensively. He had a 6 for 19 shooting night. And another important note in this game, RJ Barrett had sat the last 11 minutes and 51 seconds of this affair, declined to speak to the media after the game. So plenty of things to jump into from this very eventful game. Let's start with that final possession in regulation with the Knicks, 4 seconds essentially with the ball, inbounding on the sidelines. What did you think of the last play?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely inefficient. I mean, obviously, we start with the fact that they didn't get a shot off in before time expired. That's inexcusable. It's inexplicable. And a lot of it has to do with the way the play was drawn up, or the lack of intricacies, with the way the play was drawn up. My first problem and biggest issue is with who got the ball. Jalen Brunson, and I wrote about in the newsletter this morning, Jalen Brunson earned the opportunity to win that game last night. National TV, tons of celebrities at the Garden, league tuning in, LeBron less than 100 points away from passing Kareem. And Jalen Brunson, again, in crunch time, put the team on his back. 4 for 4 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. The last 3 buckets the Knicks had in regulation, Brunson either scored and or assisted on. Had that runner to cut the lead to 6, dish to Grimes to cut the lead to 4, to cut the lead to 2 rather. Had a floater himself in the paint to tie it with a less than a minute left, and then the Knicks needed to stop to give themselves an opportunity to win. Came over, drew a incredible charge on Anthony Davis as he was driving for a bucket. That's a game-saving charge, something we've seen Brunson do all year long, make winning plays. And that was a winning play to give the Knicks an opportunity to win the game. Now we flip over and we discuss the fact that on that final play, not only had Brunson been more efficient and effective that game, as you note, Randall was 6 of 19, through the first 48 minutes of that evening.
Yep.
Brunson's been more efficient and effective, far more efficient and effective in the clutch all season long. And so if your biggest issue is you don't want to run with, you're worried about Anthony Davis coming over and stopping, or rather LeBron James on Jalen Brunson, like that's what you're worried about. Then run a screen, run some action, any action that creates some space. You have IQ come over and run a 1-2 high pick and roll, and get LeBron in some action there. But again, on the season, I looked it up this morning. The Knicks, both Brunson and Randall, have played approximately 120 clutch minutes this season. That's what the NBA defines as as a point in any game where there's a differential of 5 points or less, and there's 5 or few minutes remaining. That's either fourth quarter or overtime. In those 120 minutes, Brunson has scored 105 points while shooting 47% from the floor, 39% from deep, and 84% from the free throw line, and has dished out 12 assists and while committing just 3 turnovers. Randall, on the other hand, has scored 56 points while shooting 27% from the floor, 23% from downtown, and 73% from the free throw line. He has 13 assists, but 11 turnovers. Again, Brunson has earned the opportunity to win that game. And he wasn't given it, and it cost the Knicks that final possession, and unsurprisingly cost them the momentum, and they got crushed in overtime. And it's another loss at home, and another time in which Tom Thibodeau's lack of X and O's acumen cost the Knicks dearly.
Yeah, it's funny. So, short story, I'm watching the game at the station with my good buddy Ryan Hickey, who, by the way, also on the Audacy network. He hosts the Indianapolis Colts podcast here. And we're watching him this game. He's also a Knicks fan. And you get to that final possession. He, knows I'm the guy who hosts the Knicks podcast on the Audacy network. And he's like, all right, EJ, what are you drawing up here? I'm like, well, I gave him like 4 options. But it all included, something with Jalen Brunson having the ball. I was like, they could run like a 1-2 with quickly, maybe in case they want to get a switch, or maybe they could just clear it out if they like the matchup and let Jalen Brunson go 1-on-1. But I told them there were 2 things they had to keep Anthony Davis out of the action and avoid LeBron James' help. And somehow the Knicks failed at both. Both things I said. There's only things they can't do. They cannot attack Anthony Davis, and they need to avoid LeBron James' help because he's an excellent help defender. He is great with hands, great with steals, and he's going to be a problem defensively. So you had to keep him out of the action as well. And somehow the Knicks drew up. I don't even want to call that a play. The fact that Tom Thibodeau keeps calling it a play is insulting to everybody's intelligence. He's back to gaslighting everybody again. He's in the postgame saying, there are 3 options on the play. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Julius Randle posted up on the wing. Brunson gave him the ball, and nobody moved.
Nope.
No one moved. That's not a play. That's just you inbounding the ball. And look, Julius Randle has to move that ball. If there's any slither of bail you're going to shoot Tibbs, is that Randle made a terrible read. You're one-on-one with Davis, and then James comes over. The read is clear. You escape dribble, you throw the ball out. You ball fake, you throw the ball out. Brunson's wide open. It's a quick decision. You don't got that much time, but he's a star player. He's paid to make that decision. But we know Julius Randle struggles in those moments. We have not seen Julius Randle make a big shot like that in the regular season for his entire career with the Knicks at this point in time, in terms of like an isolation clutch at the end of a regulation kind of play. So to go through that and to put Julius in that situation, knowing that he had already struggled, and you're going up against literally one of the greatest defensive players of all time. Like Anthony Davis is that great. And you're saying my play is to let Julius decide how to go 1-on-1 and attack Anthony Davis. I mean, Tibbs is stealing money. Like, He's paid millions of dollars to come up with a play that put the Knicks in the best position to win. Remember, it wasn't just a timeout that he had to draw something up. He had a review that took way too long, by the way. He had like 2 or 3, 4 minutes on a review on the charge because they're still drawing up a play. They assume they're getting the ball back. And then he called the timeout. And you see him with I don't know what he's drawing. What is he drawing on that clipboard? I need someone that had whoever had the zoom lens camera that Pat Beverly had when he came on the court and had that technical foul. I need someone that had a DSLR zoom to see what the hell Tibbs drew on that whiteboard.
Tic-tac-toe? Maybe he was playing tic-tac-toe with one of the assistants, you think? Something like that?
Yeah, or like it was a SpongeBob episode when he writes, the, and it's just all, a cursive and all decorative lettering. Like, that was, man, that play was inexcusable. And it's crazy to me because, like, while, like, we know Tibbs is not an X's and no mastermind. Like, the first game of the season, they are down by 3 against Memphis. He draws up that masterclass play for Cam Reddish in the corner, and they get open 3, and they send that game into overtime. Like, I know he could have drawn something better than that. And that's kind of what's frustrating about that last play.
100%. And yes, Randall made the incorrect read, but as you know, we have 3+ years of body of evidence here that you cannot trust Randall in those for everything Randall does. 20, 10, and 5 on a bad night, on an inefficient game. There's a lot to love about Julius Randall, and there are things that he struggles with. And end game situations are bad. When guys come over and double, when 2 long players double him, he very frequently doesn't see, even though he has the ability to throw a cross-court pass, he just doesn't see it. And that was another situation last night where, worst case scenario, Brunson gets an open 3. Even if LeBron rushes back and gets to him in time, Brunson's downhill and gets in the paint and can shoot a floater. But yeah, again, that's on you. A good coach puts his best players in positions to succeed. And he did Julius Randle no favors by having him isolate against a tremendously talented and long defender with another great help defender coming over. And we saw the result. And one other thing, just because you noted, I meant to mention it as well, the length of these replays is getting out of hand. We had the Anthony Davis charge one that took forever. And then the one in overtime on the goaltend. It seemed like it took a millennium for them to make a decision. If it's that close, that means it's too close to overturn, in my opinion. It was just ridiculous. That's something they need to work on. But that's another conversation for another day. Yes, I totally agree with you on the failure of that final play.
Yeah, and on that Rui play, it almost looked like they couldn't get the replay up for a while. Like, I just kept seeing the replay center, graphic on that monitor. So it looked like there might have even been a technical issue that led to that delay because there was no replay happening. They were just standing there. I'm like, are they going to look at the play? Like, what's going on? Or I thought maybe they were arguing, and we'll never know. I don't know if they were arguing whether or not they could actually review it. Because sometimes that comes into contention. But there was a long time in that stretch where they weren't even actually looking at a replay. It was just a replay center being up, and they were just standing there.
I was in the building, so everyone in the crowd was like, "What is going on here?" So, But to that point, the NBA is a billion-dollar enterprise. Same goes for the NFL. If it's there's a lot of games going on a Tuesday night, then hire 10 more people. So you have the worst case scenario. You have too many people, and some guys are twiddling their thumbs. Don't allow these. I mean, it really kills the momentum of the game. It just makes for a bad product. That's something the NBA needs to work on and address immediately.
Yeah, I'm also not crazy about goaltends that aren't the ball hitting the backboard being reviewable like that, just on the fly. Like, I think if you wanted to give them a challenge, I get that, but that's almost, I don't want to say it's a judgment call, but to me, it kind of is. Like, it's kind of a judgment call. It's like, because, to say that, okay, we're going to now look back at it. Like, when the ball hits the backboard, yes, I think you should be able to review that because that's clear. That one was so close, and it's like, it's really like some people, I thought he got it in time. A lot of people thought that it was about to come down, so therefore they should have gave Brunson the field goal. Like, it's so bang bang. Like, I just think you gotta let the person who calls on the court get that call. But the other big thing from this game, outside of the Knicks failures and executing again in overtime, which is just, us beating a drum. Russell Westbrook, I thought, had a really good overtime and a really good fourth quarter. And I think a lot of the Lakers talked about that after the game. But RJ Barrett is sitting, the last 11 minutes and 51 seconds of this game, played none of overtime, missed the last 6-7 minutes of the fourth quarter. I assume, wasn't happy because he declined to talk to reporters. As what's been noted by the people who cover the team, RJ is extremely accessible normally and does not do this kind of thing, win, lose, or draw. So RJ didn't want to talk after this game. It's another game where he sat a long period of time, did not finish this one. What did you make of that decision and then what appears to be some discontent from RJ for sitting the rest of this way?
I did not have a problem with Tibbs sitting RJ Barrett. In fact, I thought it was the correct decision. IQ is playing so well right now. It's so consistently, so productive, so efficient, just on both ends of the floor, just almost an invaluable piece. As an aside, 2 games in a row now where the Knicks have come out very flat in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Randall talked about it on Saturday night after the Nets game, basically saying we weren't ready. We didn't come out with any fight on defense, one fight through screens, weren't as crisp. That's not a good sign. And it was even worse at Tuesday night against the Lakers. Scored 5 points in the first basically 8 minutes of the game. That changed when IQ and Hardenstein was also playing really well. Credit to Hardenstein for really turning his season around over these last handful of games. And it's very much needed because Sims was outclassed against Anthony Davis last night.
And I talked about that in the last episode, that Sims against Anthony Davis could be a problem, and it was.
And it was a major problem. Sims has looked good in spurts, but since kind of being, thrown at the deep end of the pool, he has not swam. He's sunk. And just last night was another one of those nights where you really miss Mitchell Robinson. But yeah, I say that to mention how the importance that IQ had on, just changing the momentum, changing the kind of tenor of the game, his energy, his tenacity, especially on the defensive end, even when his shot's not falling, positively impacts the game night after night after night after night. And he plays extremely well. Moments never too big. So I want him on the floor, end of games. If you want to argue that RJ could have eaten into Grimes's minutes, I can live with that argument. Again, Grimes needs to start making shots. We've talked about it for the last couple of weeks. Credit to him for again contributing. Had a beautiful dime to Hartenstein late in the fourth quarter.
That was a gem.
Beautiful pass, and consistently, because his shot's not falling, he's attacking the basket more often. Got some dunks, got some layups, fed some scorers. But again, over his last, where's the numbers here? Over the next last 5 games, he's shooting 38% from the floor. Is 7 of 31 from downtown. That's 23%. That's not going to cut it during the stretch. It seems like he misses a huge momentum generating shot at least once a night, especially of late. He's 1 of 10 in the fourth quarter and overtime during that 5-game stretch. So he needs to knock down those shots. But again, he brings it to you on the defensive end when his shot's not dropping. The situation with Barrett, as inefficient as he was offensively, he's 5 for 13 last night. He was just as bad on the defensive end. Allowed a couple straight line drives by Westbrook. Didn't look kind of sharp and didn't look tuned in. So if he's not scoring and he does go stretches that first quarter in particular when he looked invisible, he's not going to help you much on the defensive end. I have no problem with him sitting in the fourth quarter and kind of earning those minutes. At some point in time, given as well as IQ was playing and RJ not quite living up to the standard that a lot of fans had hoped, it might be worth having a conversation. Is RJ better suited for the 6-man role? I guess we'll talk about that at some point in the future. But as far as last night goes, I don't have a problem with Barrett sitting. It will be interesting to see how he handles the media if he talks after practice today or before Thursday's game or after Thursday's game. To RJ's credit, he's been a complete consummate professional since the moment he arrived in New York as a 19-year-old. Not everybody can handle that. So I'm not going to get on him for kind of bailing on the media last night. We'll see how he handles it later this week.
Yeah, I echo that last point about RJ. I'm not going to go crazy about him not talking to the media after that game. Sometimes it's best you probably don't. You may say something crazy. He probably realized he had a rough game, but also wanted to play. So if he comes out and says something about not getting playing time, that becomes a whole controversy. So hopefully he takes that accountability next time he does speak, because I was on Julius Randle when he went on that month and a half stretch where he decided he just was never going to talk to the media, which was ridiculous. RJ's never done that. So, and he stood and took those answers and questions from the media during that rough Knicks stretch last season. So I'm giving him a pass there for sure. The decision to sit RJ is a tough one because, like you said, his defense is slipping so much that even when Grimes isn't making shots, it's still a decision to make as to whether or not you sit him over Barrett, because if Barrett's not scoring, he's a minus defensively. Now, I do feel like at times, like the Lakers were a tricky matchup in the sense that, because they didn't want to put Brunson on Russell Westbrook, that means somebody has to guard him. So that guy ended up being RJ Barrett for portions of this game, and Barrett's too slow. Russell Westbrook is a guy who's a declining player at this point in his career. Has had moments this year come off the bench where he's played well, but has been very erratic for most of the season. And Barrett could not stay in front of him. So there, you got to make a decision. Are you going to wait for Barrett to start making shots? Now, he's had games where he goes, 1 for 8 and then makes his last 9 shots. Like, maybe on Barrett's side, he's thinking, let me keep playing. Like, I've shown, just like in the Boston game, we finally threw him back in there. I had the biggest 3 in the game, or in other games over the course of my career, that I can make plays even when I'm struggling. But at the end of the day, it's tough when you're in those decisions and you see him struggling and he can't guard anybody on the court, at least anybody that he would have to be posted up against. So, yeah, Barrett's got to defend better. It's very simple. I mean, I think if he defends at the level that he's shown he's capable of in the past, then he has no concerns about playing at the end of the games. I do think that some of these rotations, though, have to be tweaked, because you had a stretch there where Emmanuel quickly is now playing, 14, 15 straight minutes because of just how the rotations are. And to me, that just isn't smart, just for basic trying to get the most out of these players for that time they're playing. So maybe there's a beef there for RJ, where you can say, look, the way you're managing these minutes is kind of stupid, and it's, allowing me to sit 11 minutes and other guys play 15, 16 straight minutes. Isaiah Hartenstein played 17 straight minutes at a certain point. I think there has to be some adjustment there, but until RJ starts defending consistently, I think this is going to be something that is going to be a thing for the Knicks every game. And it's crazy. I didn't think that this would be the case, but his defense was that bad last night, and I understood why he didn't play. Yeah,
it is definitely concerning that we're 50 games into the season right now, and it's not shocking that Barrett is on the bench in fourth quarter. Somebody on Twitter posted, 1 year ago he had that great game against the Lakers, and now he kind of finds himself on the outside of the rotation in crunch time. So part of that is due to the fact that how well and how indispensable IQ and Grimes have made themselves. The other side of the coin is that RJ has not progressed, especially on the defensive end, and even efficiency-wise, as the Knicks front office and coaching staff certainly would have hoped.
Yeah, I do think that, and then comes the question of, is that a larger concern moving forward for RJ, who just signed a new extension? That he's a player at this point in his career that there's a question of whether or not he's going to close a game or not. I think I want to hold on those conversations until we kind of see how the season ends. For me, like, I think it's too early to kind of jump to that conclusion where maybe they shouldn't have given him this extension, because this could end up being a short-lived thing. Like, maybe he turns it around defensively, and then we don't have these conversations in a month.
As far as the extensions, I'm not overly concerned about the extension. Again, I think it's really important to keep in mind that the cap is about to rise exponentially. You got the TV,
right.
The NBA's TV contract ending soon. Cap is going to increase dramatically. Most likely, looking ahead, projecting ahead, Barrett's going to be 18%, 17% of the Knicks total cap, and even at a 75% of what he was last year, he's still a starting player, still a good NBA rotation, at worst an average rotation player, above average offensively. He'll knock down shots. It was just, a few games ago, he knocked down that big corner 3 off the Brunson pass that they needed. As you note, he's had plenty of games where he's been awful for the first like 44 minutes, and we'll go on a stretch in the second half that
Yeah.
really turned things around. Seemed to get it going a little bit in the third quarter last night after a terrible first half. So I'm not overly concerned about RJ Barrett, long term in terms of in relation to that contract extension, because I think he's a useful player. He's going to work hard. He's going to work on things he needs to improve. He plays the right way, handles himself professionally, etc. So I'm not overly concerned about that, but I think it is fair to question whether he's going to reach his ultimate upside. But again, I think that him settling for that, and I say settling because it was far less than the max, was an acknowledgement by both sides that his ultimate star level may not be reached, but I still like the floor that Barrett brings on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I do agree with that as well. Knicks lose this one. Well, one other interesting note before I move on about that game and RJ in particular was, and I know you were at the game, so I was listening to the game in parts because I was at work, so there were times where I could listen, times I couldn't. But at one point, Jim Jackson had said something along the lines that the Knicks coaching staff felt like RJ really hasn't been up to the same level he was pre the finger injury, and that they're also waiting for him to kind of get back to that level, which was surprising to me. I hadn't heard Tibbs say that to the Knicks press corps at any point, but of course they do these pre-production meetings where they talk to these coaches. So in this conversation, I guess Tibbs had mentioned that he doesn't feel like Barrett is really not, I don't want to say not 100%, but I think he's not up to, I guess, in the right kind of shape or in the right kind of game conditioning since the injury. So that's the first time I had heard that. Maybe that has something to do with why he's not closing these games either. I think that was important to note in that one. So Knicks lose. They now turn their attention to Thursday night, where the Knicks will be back in action at Madison Square Garden when the Miami Heat come to town. Of course, plenty of great memories and about the Miami Heat rivalry. Knicks and Heat had some classics back in the late 90s, early 2000s. This is the first matchup between the Knicks and Heat this season. The Heat earned a hard-fought win over the Cavs in Cleveland Tuesday night. Then win moved Miami 2 games ahead of New York for the 6th seed in the East as the important spot. That is the final spot that avoids the play-in tournament. So, Tommy, how does New York stack up with Miami in this one?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Miami coming off they started out the season slowly, but playing much better of late. Won 4 of their last 5. Their one slip up was a bad loss to the Hornets, but have recently beaten the Pelicans, the Celtics, the Magic, who are playing a lot better of late. And they're so they were in the middle of a road trip, but you basically know what you're going to get from Miami. A well-coached team. Coach Spo was going to have his team prepared. Jimmy Butler's we've seen him play at an extremely high level for a long time. Tyler Hero's having the best season of his career. Bam Adebayo, we mentioned how Sims would need to step up against Anthony Davis against the Lakers and failed to do so. Bam's another nightmare matchup for any big in the NBA. Sims is a little more suited to deal with the physicality that Bam brings to the table, as opposed to the agility and long-range shooting that AD relies on. So it's a bit of a better matchup. But given how many minutes Hartenstein logged on Tuesday, they need Sims to at least hold his own. Sims was minus 16 in the 13 minutes he played Tuesday night, which was just backbreaking. So a deep team. Oladipo gives you some offensive off the bench. Gabe Vincent, Strus. So you basically know what the Heat are going to do. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to compete defensively. Basically play efficient offensive basketball. And the Knicks need to get back on track. Another home game. Knicks are 2 games below 500 at home this season. It looked like they'd making some progress. Now another step back. The other thing I think it's worth noting with Miami, the Heat's impressive victory in Cleveland last night, coupled with the Knicks loss, means the Knicks are now 2 games back, as of Miami. These 2 teams play each other 4 times over the next 2 months. I think looking at the big picture, in order to, if the Knicks have any hope of climbing into that 6th seed from their 7th spot right now, they probably have to win 3 of those 4 games, because if you don't, then you don't have the tiebreaker. And again, just in terms of, those games are basically count as 2 games in the standings. So these games take on added importance. You don't want to look too far ahead. Knicks still have to survive without Mitchell Robinson, get to the All-Star break, etc. But again, if you do have designs on capturing that 6th seed, these games take on added importance.
Yeah, this one's a big one, and that's why Knicks are gonna have to really turn the page from what was another big game on Tuesday. It's TNT, it's LeBron James. He's chasing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, so there's a lot of attention to that game. But like, far as the standings go and anything like that, the Lakers are in the West. They're not a championship team or anything like that. Really, this one is a game that you really have to make sure you're clued in. So, one, you can't have these bad first quarters, as you mentioned, and 2 in a row, and just 2 games in a row where I just thought it was like overall kind of just uninspired play. Like, I just felt like watching those past 2 games, there were long stretches where they couldn't get any stops. Then there's long stretches where they can't score. I mean, the Lakers made their first 9 shots, I think, in the fourth quarter. It was insane. The Knicks were lucky to be in the game because they kept scoring. But and in the Nets game, they go long stretches where they can't score, and then at the end of the game when they are scoring, they can't stop Kyrie.
100%. One quick note on the Lakers game, which is crazy. The one bucket Obi Toppin had, who again played less than 10 minutes, and again it looks more clear by the day that the Knicks, I think they really should seriously consider trading him before next week's deadline, because he doesn't have a place in the Knicks rotation. If Tibbs and Randall are here, I just don't see how he gets to, he needs to get to 12 first before he gets to 15, let alone 20. It just doesn't, he's a non-factor. And if you have invested an 8th overall pick in someone who doesn't contribute on a consistent basis, you have to reassess, prioritize, different, and then you have, the rest of the guys playing 40 plus minutes because you don't have any wing depth. There's a lot there. I say that to say this: Obi's lone bucket was a 3-pointer with about 2:30 left in the third quarter. That was the last 3-pointer the Knicks made. They went 0 of 10 from behind the arc in the fourth quarter and overtime and at the end of the third. You can't win NBA games that way. So shot making needs to improve. But yes, that's something. You talk about the stretches that you can't allow the offensive stagnation. And the other thing is the Knicks were, I think they were favored in Brooklyn. I know they were favored by 1.5 last night. I don't know when the Knicks are going to be favored again. As I noted, you got the Heat, then you got the Clippers on Saturday. Who knows what Kawhi and Paul George and those guys, but then you got the Sixers. Again, 12 of the next 14 teams are at 500 or have a winning record. The only 2 teams that don't have a winning record are the Magic, who are playing much better of late, and the Wizards, who have won 6 in a row. So there are not many easy games in the schedule. That's why these last 2 losses, as you know, that they didn't come out and play inspired basketball really sting, because there are not many games you can check off as winnable contests going forward.
And you can't play that kind of uninspired ball against a team like Miami, a team that's very detail oriented, a team that always comes out and plays hard, a team that is not going to beat themselves. A team that is going to play at a certain level. Like they may not always play at a 10, but that you're going to get a 7 or 8 every time. So that your C game is never going to beat Miami. Your B- game is probably never going to beat Miami. You need a B+ to an A every time you play against Miami in order to win. So the Knicks are going to have to play a lot better than what we've seen in the last 2 games. How do you feel like at this point? You mentioned, the fact that they're 2 games back. They have these 4 games with Miami. It's not early in the season anymore. We can't keep saying that. Now we're past the midway point. We're in kind of the thick of it now. At this point in the season, do you still feel like it is realistic to suggest that Miami could, the Knicks could catch Miami for that 6th spot? Like the way it's shaking out, it seems like those top 5 teams are pretty much set. Maybe someone could argue that Cleveland falls to 6, but I think most likely you're looking at Miami in that 6th spot. So it's really, this is the team you're chasing. You're going to be chasing this team probably the rest of the way. Do you feel like the Knicks, based on what you've seen, have a realistic shot to get to that 6th spot? Or do you feel like a trade is going to have to happen for them to catch Miami?
Yeah, I don't see it status quo. Again, the Heat are trending in the right direction. Knicks are at best plateauing, and I think we can. There's a dip on the horizon. This season has been so weird that I feel, foolish, prognosticating anything at this point. But I certainly think
Yeah.
there's a much greater chance that the Knicks slip to 7 or 8, 8 or 9 than they do jump up to 6. Again, as the top 4 teams are locked in. The fifth, again, the Cavs could, something weird could go on. You get an injury. Again, obviously, injuries can change anything. But
Right.
again, Miami with the 2-game lead, the Knicks another, 7 or 8 games without Mitchell Robinson. Their players again, another overtime game last night, which you got 42 minutes for Brunson and 44 for Rand. These minutes are going to start to wear down. We'll see how they can kind of handle it if there's a trade that they bring some guys in. Does RJ kind of turn things around? That'll obviously be important. I think the Knicks have shown enough fight, and even when times get dark and the 5-game losing streak and then the 4-game losing streak, they bounce back with some really impressive wins. That kind of buoys the floor, and that won't allow them to sink too far. But I think I don't want to say unrealistic, but I think it's certainly less than 50% chance that they do catch Miami. Given the talent on the Miami sideline, the coaching staff. But if they are going to catch Miami, these head-to-head matchups will be critical in that race. So I guess we'll reassess it later in the week on our next pod. But if
Yeah.
especially if they lose this game, full 3 games behind, and are behind in the tiebreaker situation, it's difficult to envision New York making the leap back into that coveted 6th spot.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be tough sledding for New York. I really do. I think that Miami is a team that typically they do this. Maybe early in the season, midway point in the season, they're kind of slugging through, knowing that they kind of have a bigger picture at the end where you need a title. When you get to this point and you're playing Miami at this point in the season, I just don't think you're going to get a lot of gimmies from them. Like I said, they play at a constant 7 or 8 every time. You're not going to get a 3 out of Miami. So, in order for them to catch them, that Miami's they get as an A beat up on Miami in these 4 games, which I don't think it's not gonna be easy. Could they split? Maybe, but then you're still even, and two, Miami has to really fall in some major trouble with the rest of their schedule. I don't have the rest of the schedule in front of me, so I'm not sure whether it's difficult or easy. But again, knowing kind of Miami and their attention to detail and knowing how important it is to stay out of that play-in, it would shock me if they just fell apart at parts in the season and went on a 5-6 game losing streak to allow Knicks to get back into that 6th spot. So it's going to be tough, especially not having Mitchell Robinson for you assuming like another month. Like it's going to be real tough for the Knicks. Again, of course, I'm hoping that they can find a way to get it done, but I think that's why it's going to be crucial for the Knicks when they get to this trade deadline, we will talk about soon. Like they got to decide like how important is this 6th seed thing? Like,
Yeah.
we know it's important, obviously, just in the sense of like you won't want to play in the play-in, you want to make the playoffs. But like, are you making a trade just to catch Miami? Because that's essentially, to me, what you would be doing if you're talking about making a major trade this trade deadline. Now, you can say, well, the building block you may get will be good down the line. That is true. But I just think you want to be wary of watching that loss from the Laker game and say, okay, now we have to give up that another pick for OG Anunoby because we're 2 games back of the Heat. Like I would be very cautious of thinking that way. 1, you still might not catch him, and 2, how important is getting a 6th seed in this one season when you're trying to build towards a championship.
Totally. Just to follow up on that, Knicks have the 3rd toughest remaining strength of schedule.
Yep.
All teams in the NBA. Miami is 12th, so kind of near the middle of pack. But yeah, as we know, Knicks 4 more games against the Heat, 2 more games against the Celtics, 2 more games against the 76ers, 2 more games against the Nets. Those are difficult matchups against. They haven't really played the cream of the crop in the East. There's still a lot of games left against those top teams, and that's the Nets with KD most likely, and if the Sixers stay healthy, so certainly something to keep an eye on.
Knicks Heat Thursday, 7:30, back on regular MSG network. So for those that were growing tired of the national broadcast, at ease, Clyde Frazier will be back. I'm not sure if Mike Breen will be back. He should be, actually, because it's Thursday game. So you should have Breen and Clyde back on Thursday. So fun for Knicks fans there. But let's get some other news and notes regarding the Knicks before we get out of here. So let's start with Ian Bagley of SNY. He reports that the Knicks are among several teams interested in Pistons forward Sadiq Bey. Bagley notes that the Knicks and the Pistons have a history of making trades in recent years. Of course, you had the Derrick Rose trade in the first year, Leon Rosier, his first full year as president. You had the Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel and Kemba Walker trades and all the stuff that happened during the draft. So this is a front office that have familiarity. Weaver has a long relationship with Scott Perry, so there could be interest there. Bey, 14 points per game, shooting 40% from the field, 34% from three this season. So that's a name that's now attached to the Knicks. Michael Scott of Hoops Hype is reporting the Knicks are still keeping tabs on Jazz guard Malik Beasley. Scott notes that the current regime was interested in Beasley before he signed a 4-year extension with the T-Wolves 3 years ago. At that time, Minnesota was being run by Gerson Rosas, who's now currently in the Knicks front office. So Knicks, apparently fans of Malik Beasley's game, could still be in on him. And outside of trade rumors, congratulations to Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes is headed to All-Star Weekend. He was selected to the NBA's Rising Stars game. Grimes, who is in his second season, was among 21 NBA players selected to participate. There are about 6 or 7 G League guys who are also playing in that affair. On Thursday, we will learn if Julius Randle or Jalen Brunson will be joining him in Utah, as the NBA will announce its reserves for the All-Star game then. So let's start off with the trade stuff. Beasley and Bey, 2 names most recently linked outside of OG Anunoby to the Knicks. I think these names sound more realistic to me than Anunoby, given the price that it might cost for OG. Do you have a preference between Bey and Beasley? Slightly different players, but I think if the Knicks make a trade, I think it's probably one or the other. I'll be surprised if they get both.
Right. I think if the Knicks trade for Bey, I think that tells you even further where they view Obi Toppin in the grand scheme of things. Because you assume Bey will probably play that backup 4, could play some 3. But he's played primarily power forward spot with the Pistons. So it's really difficult. Maybe there's a trade involved where Obi going out and Bey coming back. The advantage Bey gives you is a little bit more of a shooter, a little bit more of a scorer from behind the arc than Obi, even though Obi obviously has improved. But essentially, the way that the Knicks use Obi Toppin, Bey is more suited to play that role, to stand in the corner and shoot 3-pointers. So if you're not going to put Obi in a position to succeed, if you're not going to get him out in transition, you're not going to push the pace, if you're not going to feed him on cuts and things along those lines, feed him the ball in the post, then Bey's a guy that's better suited to make the most of those opportunities. I think in terms of what the Knicks need, Beasley probably is probably a better fit. Can play some. Is obviously a 2 or 3. Can play some wing. Knicks have limited depth back there, and also need 3-point shooting. We mentioned their 3-point struggles last night. They're down to 26th in the NBA in 3-point percentage this season. It's difficult to win consistently without a above average 3-point shooting team, as the Knicks are finding out. So that's something that Beasley would immediately would bring to the table. Bey is also a talented shooter, but Beasley's kind of made his bones in this league as being a marksman.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really jump to the top end being expendable if you get Bey, because Bey can play some small ball 4. I think if he came here, I think he's replacing Reddish in the rotation. I would look at him more as a wing, because he does play a lot of 3 for the Pistons as well. He's not gonna give you any minutes at the 2, but like we've been talking about how they're kind of missing that 3-man combo forward guy who can play 3-4 in the team, and because they're not playing Cam Reddish. So getting that guy would be crucial. So I think that he would probably fit more there, where I think he's playing alongside Big Pride and IQ off the bench, as opposed to having to play RJ those minutes with those guys so often. So I think if you're talking about that, I may go with Bey, because I think Bey may have a little bit I think he has a little bit more defensive versatility. He's a little bigger. Maybe Beasley's about 6'4", 6'4.5". So you're kind of getting another guy similar size to Quentin Grimes, who really isn't equipped to really guard 3s either. So I think the Knicks, one of the problems I think they had in that game against the Lakers. Now, of course, LeBron James is a one-on-one, but like Julius Randle had to play all those minutes because the Knicks decided that they were going to put no one else on him. I mean, there was a stretch in the fourth quarter where he actually took Randall out of the game. He took Randall with Andre and talking about Tibbs out of the game just because LeBron came out, which I actually thought was smart because actually he's getting some minutes here for Randall, which was good.
And
But as soon as
and Randall picked up his fourth foul early in the fourth.
right, Randall picked his fourth foul also. But then once James came back in, which maybe was like 2 minutes, like Randall came back in, and you kind of see Obi's face, like, oh my God, like you can't put me in for 2 minutes. Like, Randall had been struggling offensively, so I actually thought maybe he was pulling him just because he wasn't giving the Knicks anything. You would hope that with a trade with a move like this with Bey, maybe you have a little more flexibility where you can put Bey on a guy like LeBron James, and I'm not saying he's gonna stop him, but he's a body, Whereas Obi Toppin, they didn't want really LeBron having any time on Obi Toppin, at least no extended time on Obi. So I kind of see the fit there with Bey. But either guy I think will be fine. In some ways, I kind of would prefer one of these trades as opposed to giving up a lot of first round picks for OG Anunoby, because I just think that there may be a chance to get a bigger fish, and I'd like to have as many assets as you can. So I was cool with either of these names when they came up. I do want to ask you about the thoughts on Grimes making the Rising Stars game.
Yeah, I obviously I think he deserves it. When you talk about just his production on both ends of the floor, especially since he entered the starting lineup, was a key factor in the Knicks kind of turning their season around. So I'm excited for him to get the opportunity. I also think it's cool that the NBA is including the G League guys in the Rising Stars game. In particular, Scoot Henderson, for fans that haven't got a chance to see him much in the G League or see him in that back-to-back set that they played against Wembanyama's France team. Henderson is the kind of universal number 2 overall pick, and would go number 1 in most years if not for the incredibly unique Wembanyama. So I'm very interested to see, kind of how Scoot shows out against those guys. And it looks like they're doing a little something interesting. The 4 teams, and they're so they'll have play like, games to 40, essentially. It looks like kind of a Elam ending type thing. So it'll be cool to see how all that plays out.
Yeah, they did this last season was the first year they did this kind of mini tournament, and it was really fun. I mean, people think the All-Star game is bad. I mean, the Rising Stars Challenge has been just dreadful recently, just absolutely no defense being played in these games. So they found a way to spice it up, and I watched, again, as I said, I'm an All-Star game fundamentalist. So I watched, every minute of the Rising Star Challenge last year, and I thought it was awesome. I was like, wow, this is way better than what I'm used to watching. So the fact that we get to see Quentin Grimes go out there and play with a lot of these other young players, it's just really nice to kind of just look at that list of players. Like, there are a lot of really guys that are, obviously Scoot Henderson, of course, maybe a phenom playing from the G League, but some of the other guys just that are just rookies or sophomores that are on that list, and see Quentin Grimes' name on there. It kind of lets you know that, hey, Knicks that do have a guy that is a true building block and a guy who could be somebody who's here when the Knicks finally turn this thing around. So congrats, Quentin Grimes. Go ahead.
Interestingly, 2 years, the Knicks nailed that 25th pick in IQ and Grimes. Both those guys will be drafted in the top 10 should they do redraft. So that's a feather in the hat of the front office. Also, IQ and Grimes were on that tree of the Kristaps Porzingis trade, whose the anniversary of was yesterday. The picks that they got were part and parcel of funneled down from that trade. So it's something worth noting.
Yeah, and finally, I'll give you yes or no on 2 of these. One, will the Knicks have an All-Star? Yes or no?
Yes.
Will they have 2? Yes or no?
Not on Thursday. I think. So no. I'll say no on as of 48 hours from now.
So no, but then there will be a replacement. So I got to ask, so who do you think gets in the original way, and who do you think kind of gets put in as a commissioner's pick?
Again, as somebody that you have enlightened the people on, there is very important to note the structure in which players get selected to the All. It's not the 10 best players. It's not the 8 best reserves. It's just it's by forward/center, so bigs and guards. The competition for the guards are so heavy that I think Brunson's going to get left off. I think Randall's going to make it. even though I personally believe Brunson's more valuable to the team. And if the Knicks could only have one representative, I think it probably should be Brunson. But again, that's not the way it works. This is not like baseball where you pick one guy to represent the team, and that, it doesn't matter if he's a reliever or a second baseman.
Right.
It's a forward spot. The players that are choosing the reserve roles, it has to be, they have to rely, based on that format. I think Randall gets in, and I think Brunson, gets named later. But I think Randall on Thursday is when they announce the reserves.
Yep.
Correct. I think Randall will be an All-Star Thursday, and Brunson may have to wait his turn a little bit.
I'm gonna say both these guys get in. Okay. And maybe it's wishing on a wish, but I really do think that game they had last week with the Celtics, I think could have definitely swayed some people. That's a big game. Everybody's watching. Brunson and Randall were just boogieing in that game. And that probably is one of the last games the coaches saw before they put their votes in. So I'm going to say that Brunson maybe gets the last spot. I think it's going to be tight. I think Randall definitely gets in, but I think Brunson's going to be one that's going to be tricky. There's just so many imperfections with some of these other guards he's going up against. James Harden missed a bunch of time. So I think that people will look at Brunson's overall totality and see what he's done and see what the Knicks have been now that he's on the team. And I think the coaches will value that more than maybe the media and the fans have. Not Knicks fans, of course, but fans across the
I don't disagree with you. I think he's definitely deserving. I also couldn't help but think one of the other reasons I was annoyed that Brunson didn't get an opportunity to get the ball in his hands with 4 seconds last night on Tuesday night against the Lakers was if he had hit a game winner against LeBron at the Garden, 2 days before they announced, I think that would almost have locked him in, because that's the one thing he doesn't yet have on his Knicks resume is kind of a buzzer beater game winner. And I thought it would have been cool for him for that kind of be his crowning All-Star moment. So that was frustrating, but you certainly can make a very strong case that Jalen Brunson deserves to be an All-Star.
Yeah, I believe in my heart of hearts that if he gets that ball in that last play, that they win. I don't know why. Maybe it's unfair to say that, and probably is. But just the way he was playing that last minute, I was like, he's either gonna get fouled or he's gonna score. I just thought there was no way the Lakers are gonna stop him. So the fact that he didn't get the ball again is just unbelievable to me. But I think that's where we're gonna wrap it here. So thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of the Orange and Blue Buzz podcast, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature so you can get these podcasts every time we drop. And also make sure you check us out on YouTube. We are now on the Audacy Sports page. So make sure you guys check us out on YouTube as well so you can see our handsome faces along with this great analysis. Tommy Beer, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram and TikTok. That will do it for now. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.